This morning, the coming power struggle in the Texas Senate. Republicans want to cement their control. Veteran Democrat Royce West on how he expects this to all play out. The financial records Governor Abbott did not want you to see. Where the millions went for his inauguration last year and how much taxpayers spent to keep it a secret. The Supreme Court has spoken, so has the Electoral College, but many Texas Republican leaders still are not saying that Joe Biden is president-elect. Does that help or hurt the Texas GOP? He is brand new to the job. Travis County Judge Andy Brown with us from Austin on his request to faith leaders this Christmas week. And Trammell Crow, the Green Republican living in a red state. What this influential conservative has to say about the GOP, climate change, and Texas going green.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers from across the state. Let's first get you caught up on the top political headlines all around Texas. About this time every 4 years, Texans contact their congressional representatives looking for tickets to the presidential inauguration in D.C. Don't waste your time this go around. Because of COVID-19, there will be no public attendees for President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration next month. But in the next 90 days, ordinary Texans, folks like you and I, could be getting the COVID-19 vaccine. Governor Abbott says our state will get 1.4 million doses of the vaccine by the end of the month. After inoculating healthcare workers, frontline workers, and senior citizens, the governor said the vaccine would then be made available to the rest of us, maybe by March. And a former Houston cop faces a lot of trouble right now. Former HPD Captain Mark Aguirre got busted for forcing an air conditioning contractor off the road, then pointing a gun at his head. Aguirre insisted the AC guy was really hiding 750,000 fraudulent ballots in the back of his truck. It turns out the AC guy only had air conditioning supplies in his truck. Aguirre is now charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. A little more than 20 days away now from the next legislative session in Austin, the Texas House will get a lot of attention with a new leader to be elected in that chamber. But we begin this morning in the Texas Senate and the power struggle that will likely unfold there. Our first guest is veteran Texas Senator Royce West, who represents downtown Dallas and much of the southern portion of Dallas County. Senator, it's good to see you again.
Jason, it's nice seeing you also.
I want to start with this rule change that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is suggesting. Republicans no longer have a supermajority after November, after Pete Flores lost outside San Antonio. So Patrick now wants to lower the number of senators that's required to get a bill on the floor. And this, as you know, ensures that Republicans maintain control. How do you see this playing out? Is there any chance for Democrats to do anything?
How many Republican senators do we have?
We'll have, 18 at that point.
That answers your question, right?
So no chance then for Democrats to do anything then?
Only if there's a cracking armor with the Republicans in the Senate, and I don't think there will be.
I want to ask you, too, about police reform. In the past, we have seen you session after session leading successfully bipartisan measures on police reform. We saw the civil protest over in social unrest over the murder of George Floyd this past summer. What kind of legislation, if any, do you expect to come out of that?
Well, that's a very good question. We've been talking with police groups. I think there will be legislation coming out. The governor has said that he believes that there ought to be some additional accountability with law enforcement. And so I think that the George Floyd Act, portions of that should pass. I've been talking to several organizations about that, and some of the reforms in there they're supportive of it. Some of them they're not, and so we'll do that. Vote and John Act. So I think that there will be legislation that will be passed during this legislative session. I want to make certain I encourage those groups that want to see reform to stay involved in this particular process, because this is where the rubber will meet the road in terms of getting something done.
Yeah, indeed so. I want to ask you about electric vehicles also. We're seeing a lot more of them on the road these days, but obviously electric vehicles aren't filling up at the pump, so they aren't contributing to the fuel tax. So how in the world is Texas going to make up that loss of revenue?
Well, very good. A very good question. We've got to make certain that we pay electric vehicle owners pay their fair share. And the question becomes, where do they pay it? We've got to also begin looking at where do we put charging stations along the state highways, and work with our federal colleagues in terms of putting charging stations around these interstate highways. And so we've got to figure out a way whether or not when they charge their vehicles at night, that there's additional monies that will be paid in order to put into our fuel fund in order to make sure we can continue to build highways within the state of Texas.
So is that an additional tax when they plug in and fuel up, or is it an additional tax when they purchase the vehicle? What are you thinking?
Well, right now, conceptually, I just want to see us make certain we do something about it. Now, in terms of how we do it, that's going to be, we're going to have to pull in the car dealers. We're going to have to pull in those persons that are building the electric vehicles, and we need to build in other shareholders or stakeholders in this particular issue in order to figure out what's the best way to do it.
Speaking of stakeholders, Senator, you are a big advocate for higher education too, and making sure that there's opportunity for all children to go to college. I'm just curious how that might be possible, especially going into a session when there's less money to spend.
What I want to see, UNT Dallas is the first public university in the city of Dallas. We've got to make certain that it has the resources that's necessary in order to continue to develop, and also any types of programs that we have that is geared towards providing scholarships for students, not only UT Dallas, but UT Arlington and other public universities. And so when you end up having budget issues like we will have this session, one of the first areas that's cut is higher education. And so I want to make sure we minimize any cuts, and that universities that are I guess you could say that are still growing don't get cut so deeply where they will end up losing their momentum as it relates to developing and providing students opportunities to attend in terms of financial aid. All
right, we'll be watching to see how that plays out. State Senator Royce West, good to see you again. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you.
Merry Christmas, Jason. Keep on doing a great job.
Thank you, sir. Now to the financial ledger that Governor Abbott fought so hard to keep secret. For almost 2 years, he did not want it to be known how $5.3 million was spent for his inauguration last year. Turns out the country singer George Strait got paid $1.7 million of it. Almost another million went to pay those salaries for people who worked on the inauguration. And here's the kicker. You and I, Texas taxpayers, paid $116,000 in legal fees to try to keep this out of the public domain. The Texas Tribune sued to try to make this public. With us now from Austin is Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Ross, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well here. Terrific work on staying on top of this to you and your team. But why did the governor want to keep this so secret, and what's your biggest takeaway from what was revealed?
I think they were embarrassed at the numbers. As you said, the staff got paid $900,000. They spent $900,000, most of it on their fundraisers, just straight salaries to them. I think they were embarrassed by the size of the numbers. And when we asked for them, they wanted to keep them private. They said the records didn't exist. We sued. It ended up being settled and out of court. We got to look at the bank ledgers, and that's where the stories came from.
Wow, tremendous work on that, Ross. I want to ask about politics here, too. Enrollment is down at so many public school districts all across the state. And we're hearing from school administrators, talked to one the other day in Sunnyvale, they're asking state lawmakers, just because enrollment is down, don't cut state funding, which is often tied to that. What do you expect to happen?
I think they're probably going to get their way. The state suspended this is an average daily attendance, and it's how the state funds public schools. In light of the pandemic, they suspended their stuff and said, we'll just stick with the expected enrollments instead of the actual enrollments. The schools are asking another semester of that. I think they'll probably get it.
All right. Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, the newest county judge in Texas, Andy Brown, is with us from Austin, a veteran Democrat, on things he now wants to get accomplished in the state's capital city. And Trammell Crow, the Green Republican, living here in a solid red state. Has the GOP missed the boat on climate change? One of our questions for him in a moment. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. In Austin, there is a new county judge. Voters elected Andy Brown as the Travis County judge there. He replaces Sarah Eckhart. She just got elected to the Texas Senate. Judge Brown is a veteran of Democratic politics and has a request for faith leaders this Christmas week. He is with us from Austin right now. Judge, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
You have asked faith leaders to go virtual for the holiday services. Have you heard from many of them? Have they listened to you?
Absolutely. I talked to Reverend this morning. Yesterday talked to the Austin Diocese, to some folks there, and have talked to different faith groups, interfaith. And absolutely, we've had great conversations. And I've learned that, most, if not all of them that I've talked to are already taking precautions. They're offering services already virtually. Right. And for people who, don't have access to do it virtually, they're taking precautions of requiring mask wearing and distancing in their places of worship.
Judge, I want to ask about one of the things you ran on, and that is jailing fewer people and getting mental health helpers out to work on mental health issues that so many individuals have that end up in jail. I'm curious about the jail that Travis County has planned specifically for women inmates. How likely do you think that is to come to fruition?
That's a good question. My top priority for the county, because the single largest line item expenditure for Travis County government currently is the jail. And my goal is to reform our criminal justice system from a reactive approach where people commit crimes to get the help they need in the jail to a proactive approach where our community is safer because people are actually getting the access to mental health, access to behavioral health, and access to health care outside of the jail, right, so that we have fewer people in the jail. Do you expect, though, that the court will approve that women's jail whenever that comes before court to fund it? It's something that I'm in discussion with our community about right now, and my understanding is that it has been delayed several times in front of the court because of different issues that have come up. And my hope is that instead of spending $100 million to build a new jail, that we instead invest in funding areas of our community that needs it the most, including mental and behavioral health services outside of the jail. And one of the things I believe you talked about too was that the jail population has gone down as well, so there may not be need for that. I want to ask you about some news of the day as well. There's news that Russian hackers actually breached the city of Austin's computer system. Has that happened also to Travis County? Not to my knowledge, and I know that I did talk to our IT person, Paul Hoppengartner, yesterday, and I have great confidence in Paul and the actions that Travis County is doing to make sure that we stay safe, that our internet technology and data stays safe within Travis County. And final moments here too, you can just answer yes or no on this. I'm curious, one of the ways that hackers got in was through a software company there based in Austin called SolarWinds. Does Travis County use SolarWinds for software? I believe, I don't know the answer to that, okay. I guess, for sure. I think that my understanding is whatever software we use is different than the software that was used that was breached. Gotcha. I'm still learning some details about that. All right, sounds good. Judge Andy Brown, congratulations again on the election in October, filling out the remainder of 2 years. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you spent any time in Texas, you likely know the name Trammell Crow. From the real estate development empire. Trammell S. Crow's father established it, and now with the same name, this Trammell has made a name for himself. He is a Texas Republican who is a staunch advocate for the environment. On this week's episode of our Y'all-itics Political Podcast, co-host Jason Wheeler and I called him up and talked about it all. Mm-hmm. Trammell, let me ask you about the biggest issue out there right now when it comes to the environment. That's climate change. And there is a stark divide between the two political parties on climate change. Democrats say we've got to address it immediately and take drastic action. Republicans on the other side say, hey, this is just something it's cyclical with our planet. And my question to a lot of Republicans are you taking it seriously enough? Do you think the GOP is taking climate change seriously enough?
Oh, of course not. They had their heads in the sand. Many of them have been deniers, flat out. Many of them have repressed science. I'm a Republican. I get a lot of flack for it. And the oil industry over the years has spent 10 times more lobbying against it, or I would say, in addition to their disinformation campaign, 10 times more than the environmental groups have spent to further it. But Republicans were much more in accordance with climate change in the 70s and the 80s when it really first became an issue. there was a sea change.
Yeah.
So how do you change that? You're an influential guy. How do you change that at the individual politician level?
Well, we work with folks like Lindsay. We work with some think tanks that are centrist or right of center in Washington. The majority of registered Republicans do not believe in serious man-made climate change at this time. But the majority of people who vote Republican, the vast majority of people who vote Republican, do.
Take us back and tell us how Trammell Crow became an environmentalist, a conservationist.
I have a very stock response.
Oh, don't give us stock. Give us something good.
No stock responses.
It's a great story. My brother went to military school in the 8th grade, and I was in the 6th, and he came home for Thanksgiving. Now, about 2 years older than I, Harlan, who runs the company, and you can imagine how much I had missed him. And Thanksgiving seemed like forever. And it was a Norman Rockwell moment with the big brother in uniform coming home. And as I was kind of looking up his pressed slacks with the stripe up the side, he taught me 3 words: politics, population, and environment. Texas will go green. Texas is the energy capital, and of course, by far, the wind power state. We will lead. Sid Miller, the ag commissioner, that was the phone ringing a moment ago, has fantastic sustainable farming practices going.
Trammell, was that the agriculture commissioner, Sid Miller, calling you a moment ago when the phone rang?
Wow.
Did he leave you a voicemail?
Maybe.
There's a lot more to our conversation with Trammell Crow. You can grab the episode right now. If your phone's handy, open the camera, aim it at the QR code there on the right side of your screen, and it will take you directly to the episode. While you're there, take a moment and subscribe to Yolitics as well. Well, the Supreme Court has spoken, so has the Electoral College, but many Texas Republican leaders still are not saying Joe Biden is president-elect. Does that help or hurt the Texas GOP? We're going to get into that coming up next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross Ramsey is back with us from the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram is here. And of course, Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas, joins us each week. Ross, will start with you and Texas Republicans. The Supreme Court has spoken on who the next president's going to be. The Electoral College has. So many Texas Republicans, though, still can't utter those words. President-elect Joe Biden. Why not?
I think they're going to come around. They're stuck in a political trap that they set for themselves. I think they're going to have a particularly hard time when we tell them about Santa Claus. But, it's time. The guy won the race.
But it is a political trap they set for themselves.
It is, and the polls show that the voters are not giving up. 60%, more than 60% of Republicans are on Trump's side and want to keep fighting. 80% think that the election was stolen. The Republicans are just trapped between what they want to do, which is move ahead, and what their voters want them to do, which is overturn it in the Congress.
So how do you think this is going to play out, Bernadine? Because again, they are trapped here, and the leaders do want to move ahead.
They are trapped, but January the 20th. Joe Biden president-elect Joe Biden will be president. And it doesn't matter what the grassroots want or what they think, because reality is there. We've already gone through the Electoral College. Yeah. And now on January the 20th, they will have to, I'm not going to say they'll ever recognize it, because, some of the Democrats never accepted President Trump. But they need to get over it.
Yeah, and indeed so. Does all this?
Jason,
go ahead, Bud.
Jason, one of the big groups I'm surprised about is the Faith and Values, faction. There's many in the Faith and Values group that are saying that Trump was put in office by God, and that we need to keep fighting so that Congress can do God's will. And there's a large faction that believes that.
Does all this, Ross? Does this help or hurt the Republican Party of Texas?
You know, I think it's a minor setback. If they really dig in and this becomes a protracted thing, you know, it'll be an issue for a long time. There's a clear culture war here. There's a clear party war here. But at some point, you have to just acknowledge the results, I think.
Yeah, indeed so. But some of the worst COVID counties are really, you know, kind of south and west of Dallas-Fort Worth. And with the, Christmas week coming up on us here, it's likely to get worse. Are those county judges doing anything to try to
that's something I think
settle it?
People will look at after the pandemic. I think the rural counties, the county judges, a lot of them have just done nothing, and some of them, the courthouses don't even have any COVID precautions, and COVID's just running in that county. You don't have a town newspaper anymore. You don't have a town radio station. Nobody's really standing up and getting the word out saying, hey, y'all, we've got a problem here. I think that's something that we'll have to look at, is the way rural Texas just didn't really drop the ball in this pandemic.
Yeah, and Bernadine, as we see the urban centers, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin get these vaccines in, it looks like it might be settled in the urban centers a lot sooner than the rural areas if this doesn't change out there, right?
Well, absolutely. And you do have the hospitals out in the rural areas complaining because they need the vaccine as well as the urban counties.
Right.
But they'll eventually get it. It's just that you do have some of these rural counties now who are trying to do something to combat it. But you have the hospitals. So it is coming.
Yeah, we hope so. Guys, thanks so much. We appreciate your time. Merry Christmas to you all. Thanks for watching as well, and an early Merry Christmas to you as well. We're back again next Sunday with Inside Texas Politics. Hope to see you then.